G'day guys, I'm Joe from Jollip Lures and welcome back to this week's podcast. Thanks so much for all the support so far, guys. It's been fantastic. Got some great feedback on our podcast videos and audio episodes. We haven't done that many yet, but the feedback we've got off the field have been absolutely fantastic. While we do touch on that audio episode, don't forget to head over to Spotify. You can follow us there on Spotify, and don't forget to download that episode. That's how you can directly help us out, and it helps you out as well, because if you're driving in the car and you're dropping out of service, it's downloaded, you're going to have it there on your Spotify account. If you drop out of service, you can listen to it, or you download it, you go away fishing for the weekend or something with your mates, and you can have a listen to it. So guys, definitely head over, check out that Spotify platform, helping us, and in return, we're going to keep pumping out this cracking content for you guys. Guys, this week's video, I know I say this all the time, this is a belter. This is unbelievable. The things we dive into in this chat are real. There's some really unbelievable knowledge in here. I was blown away. I literally sat down with this person and their husband, Brian, for like 5 or 6 hours. I think I didn't get home till about 1 o'clock back to the cabin to have a rest, so have a sleep. So it is the one and only Debbie Dare from Glenline Dam Tourist Park. This lady, Debbie, the knowledge she has on Australian timber lures and Australian lures, collectible lures in general, is absolutely amazing. And I've known Debbie and Brian for best part of 30 years. And by far, this is one of the most amazing chats I've ever had with them. We sat down, it was real, they tipped lures out, we chatted about everything lure making. It was really unbelievable. So I had an absolutely cracking night. Big shout out to Debbie and Brian for inviting me into their home to do this interview, guys. I'm going to stop gibbering on. I'm going to crack a tin here like we do every week. I want you guys to sit back and enjoy, because this is an absolutely great episode, and it really comes from a different angle. It really looks at things from a different angle, not just about making lures, but collecting lures. And there's some really good tips in there for guys that might be looking at starting off a lure collection of your own. So, like I said, guys, we've got that audio episode there. You might miss out on a few things visual, but we're going to talk you through it a little bit more, so anyone that's listening in can definitely get the gist of what's happening. So I'm going to stop gibbering. I'm going to have a drink. Check out this episode with Debbie Dare from Glenline Dam Tourist Park. Alrighty guys, here we are with arguably the lady that knows the most about timber lures in Australia, lure makers, everything there is to know. As her husband says, even probably their inside leg length. She knows everything there is to know. Debbie Dare, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, not a problem at all. Tonight's chat's going to be totally different to our last chat with Matt from Baramba Lures. We're really going to dive into the collecting scene here today. As you can see behind me, there is some very, very talented lure makers here in Australia, and we really want to highlight that. And we're going to chat to Debbie, maybe dive in a little bit on what makes certain lures collectible, why would you collect a certain lure, and just everything there is to know about Australian lures. So before we get into it, Debbie, tell us a little bit about yourself and how it all started for you.
Well, 36 years ago, my husband and I started Glenline Dam Tourist Park, and about 2 years after that we started selling timber local lures, and I'm talking RMGs, timber RMGs, Tenterfield lures, Peter Newell, Whitty's lures from Glen Innes. Try to keep to our local blokes, and now they're the ones that are the collectible. And I didn't keep them then, mind you. I sold them. But yeah, and it wasn't until I've been selling lures for years, obviously, and getting to know the people as well. And it was in 2011 I started lure collecting, sitting in front of a screen with eBay, which was probably a mistake at the time. eBay and Lure Lovers. I had a knee operation and had nothing else to do but to do that in my daytime hours, and I started buying lures and doing a bit of research and looking at old posts. Lure Lovers, Lure and More, they started me off. And I rang up Brett Campbell when I saw an ad in New South Wales fishing magazine, and he was putting out these anniversary sets, and I asked him for one, and he said, "No, sorry, not doing them anymore, but I will make you some lures." And it started from that.
And we'll drop in here, guys, exactly those lures Debbie's just been talking about. I've been like a kid in a candy store down here for about the last hour on the floor. Brian sprawled them all out, we're going through them, and really quite some spectacular models we've just looked at over there.
Yes, many. I would have said 200 was in that bag. So, and they're all nudes. I started collecting nude lures, unpainted lures to start with, and then realised that, it's not describing. It's not, it's the paint job on the lures that make it the collectable.
Collectible, yeah, for sure.
And it makes, when you've got different makers, you can see a paint job and say, that's definitely that maker. So it describes them.
That's really interesting. We'll just dive into that. That's really interesting you've just brought that up. Last week we spoke to Matt from Baramba Lures, and we absolutely said the exact same thing. I could hand Matt one of my lures and he could paint it, and you could come along and go, well, that's a Matt lure, because you can just pick out a certain style that the lure makers go for.
Definitely, and that's what we've got to do. That's part of the research that goes into collecting lures, to recognise a certain paint job and the eyes that may be different to another. But no, it's interesting, and after that I started collecting painted lures, obviously, and everyone's. And there's a lot of websites out there now on Facebook, different pages or so, and people are always posting up, oh, can someone tell me what this is, or someone can tell me what that is, and people like yourself, you can identify eyes or a different toe point, it's slightly bent, or hey, the split ring's used on that or this, and you can really narrow that down to an era. So to have that knowledge, it's absolutely priceless, isn't it? It comes with, I suppose, the last 10 years of doing this. So
lots of time and effort and research going into it.
Definitely, and you can tell when it's an earlier model, and that's what's about valuing the lures as well. Which ones are earlier and which ones are, have the screw-in hook hangers, and so.
Before we go down a rabbit hole with what makes lures collectible and makers, etc., you brought something up there before which I think is pretty cool to talk about. The amount of quality lure makers that have come out of this sort of New England, Tenterfield, New England area. What made this area so special for lure making, and why did so many guys just go, hey, let's jump in to make lures? Was there a certain person that sort of kicked it off, or was it just there's so many great native species around in this area that sort of built that, hey, let's make a lure to go and catch these fish?
Well, a lot of it was Peter Newell coming to town and, his lures taking off, as in the Kodicha and the Scorpion, but also him teaching other people how to make lures. And then it just snowballed. But when you go for Inverell area, that's still part of the New England, in the early 90s, there was 43 lure makers.
Wow.
And I found 38.
Wow, that's unreal.
And some of them are in their 80s, so. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And that had a lot to do with the meatworks.
Yeah, okay.
Because you had a couple of meatworks at Inverell and further, and, the guys would all work there. They'd have a place of selling them. The staff would all their mates would all buy their lures. So. Yeah,
that's unreal.
So the meatworks had a lot to do with it, and I suppose Tenterfield was the same. There was a few blokes from the meatworks as well.
So you spoke about Peter Newell. Is that a little bit of the reason why Peter was such a highly spoke about sort of name in that Tenterfield area, because he was sort of a bit of a godfather for showing other people?
I think so, and innovative too. His designs were. And it wasn't a secret either, even though he had a painting on the Scorpion originally. You'd go and get a lure off him, you get a catalogue, and he'd draw a template on the back of it to go home and make them. So, nothing, it wasn't a secret.
Yep.
He did share his knowledge, and that helped a lot of lure makers. And I know a lot that started, especially when he did the story for Modern Fishing in 1983, that said, roll your own. And that started off a lot of people.
Yeah.
Darren McQueen being one of them.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people have told me that that's how they started making lures, was using those templates that were in that book and then designing their own afterwards.
And that's amazing, because we were just speaking this about before off camera. It's, if a lot of lure makers these days could look in this bag over here that we've just looked at, I'm sorry guys, but if you invented a new lure, it's been done before. Like these guys 30, 40 years ago, it's been done. Like you the end of the day, you can't reinvent the wheel, but you can change it and you can try and make it better. But some of these guys were well ahead of the era, weren't they?
I think so too. Like Peter designed a lot of lures. Some never even made it to market.
Yeah.
So, and some are still waiting to be produced in Kokoda, to name a few. Yes, so...
Which in a way, it is good to see that live on in a way. Like a little party goes, oh, it's kind of cool to keep it timber, but it's nice to see his name and that lure live on for other people to use and enjoy.
Well, the Kokoda ones were timber.
Okay, there you go.
Well, yes, surface lure that had Peter Newell's story on the picture. It actually was a timber lure.
There you go.
So, yeah.
I told you this lady knows everything about lures there is to know. All right, the next thing, Debbie, is I want to explain to this maybe the new guys out there, the younger guys I should say. I myself grew up, I had collections for certain reasons because I might have liked that maker or I might have worked for that certain person. I had a little sort of a soft spot for them and that's why I collected it. Is there some tips you could maybe give to young guys out there that want to start a collection on that? They might be lost, well, what is a collection? What do I collect, one of this or one of that? Is there any sort of guidelines maybe that you could give them just to kick off their collection?
There's all different types of collectors though. This is the thing. I collect everything, and not only lures, I collect all fishing gear.
Yep.
And rods and sounders and old motors even, and fishing books. But there's a lot of people that just collect one lure of each lure maker.
Yeah.
Out there, and they're trying to get one of everything, which, you know, is going to take them years.
Yeah.
But I think it's what you can afford. If you cannot afford the timber lure, you start with, say, your plastic stump jumpers, for example,
yep.
And that's an affordable thing that you, and they've got a huge colour range, so you can go for a colour range.
Yep.
But if you're going for the timbers, it is good to have a connection to the lure maker so that you know a bit of his history behind it. So yep. Someone who's in your local area. That you can build up your knowledge on the lures, which will build up your collection.
Yep.
And a lot of it is something like you might have had that in your tackle box, you know, back in the early 90s, and you think, oh, I love that lure.
Yeah.
I caught a lot of fish on that one, so I'm going to go for that maker.
Yep.
But he's got to have, obviously, a range for you to collect.
To collect. And would you specifically, like, pick out, like if you had a favourite colour, would you go, hey, I might try and have this colour in all the range, or maybe just spread it out a bit?
Well, it depends on the maker, obviously,
yep.
if he's got that sort of range. I do know of people that just collect yellow and black lures.
Yep.
But it's pretty limiting,
yep.
I think. I think it's pretty limiting.
And as you can see here behind, guys, I'll drop in some colours and some cutaways here. And these are just some of Debbie's prized possessions. And when she says she collects everything, she literally collects everything. There's Saratoga behind me. There's rats behind me. There's cherubim behind me. There's magpies, for crying out loud. Lucky it's not September. I'd be getting swoop sitting here. There's everything you can name behind there. So I'm sort of with Debbie. I like, if I was going to get back into the collecting, I want to have a bit of everything. It's sort of when you have people around or friends around to have a beer, it's a talking point, isn't it? Like all the different. We spent half an hour going through them all there before, so it is really cool to have a little bit of everything.
I do a rotation as well. I get a new lure, I might go, oh no, I'll demote that one. Okay.
Yeah. And that's all part of it, isn't it? That's just all part of it.
I haven't got a favourite lure. Of all my lures, I haven't got a favourite, and I haven't got one that I have a goal of actually getting.
Yeah.
I just, what comes my way.
Yep, just take what you can get.
Yeah, what comes my way. If it's something that I need to add to a collection, like a colour range for boomerang, for example, I think I'm about 3 short. But I don't care. It can happen in 10 years' time.
Yep.
I'm not going out there and paying big money just to get those 3 lures.
It'll just come.
I'll just wait.
Yep.
I'll just wait. It'll come. So there's so many good lure makers out there, and so many young ones coming on, which is really good to see.
We just spoke about that before. It is really refreshing to see the amount of talent, and like I was a young guy, but now I'm not so young because all these like 17 to say 20-year-olds are coming in and they're having a crack at it, and it's really good to see. And
they're checking out Facebook, they're checking out YouTube, they're trying to get as much information as they can.
That's an interesting point you bring up too. Like even when I first started, I relied on YouTube a lot. That's just a tool we have. When these guys, like all these lures we've looked at here on the floor, they never had this stuff. Like if they wanted to know what a bib placement did, they simply cut it in and went down the creek and swum it. Like they couldn't just type it in. So I think it's really important to remember where it all started. These guys had nothing that we had available now, yet some of their lures, and we spoke about paint jobs, like their paint jobs down there are amazing. That's
true. That is true. But everything evolves. Everything evolves.
Well,
the paints are so much better these days too, Dave.
And like we spoke about airbrushes, like some of what you showed me before were hand painted with the brush, much like what Matt Fraser said he started with, just a paintbrush. So it's everyone's got to start somewhere.
That's it.
That's you've answered already a couple of our guest questions. We'll just we'll jump into that one you just spoke about with evolving. Where do you see timber lures in 10 or 15 years' time? What do you think is in the future for timber lures in Australia?
There has been over the years a swing, like say in the 90s where there was a lot of lure makers, and then a few drifted away, and some have actually come back to the industry again, which is good to see. We are going to lose some, obviously, because of age.
Yeah.
There's a lot that are in their 70s at the moment, you know, and are still working, have been making lures for 40 years.
Yeah.
There's a big list. I actually did a list for the Expo. But there's so many young ones coming on and developing really fast too.
Yeah.
You know, their style, their paint jobs, you know, and thank goodness. Thank goodness. I'm going to be able to go for years now.
And that has a lot to do with what we spoke about. Obviously, the technology is available now. What once might have took a guy 5 years to learn, he can pick up in a couple of years now, just pure and simply for what's available. And that's exactly why we're trying to do this stuff, is to educate people on timber lures, to keep it alive for everyone, because I know it's always been something so exciting for me. I remember my first timber lure, I think, might have been a deception, and hence why I had a deception collection for so many years. So I think go out and get that first timber lure, and it's really going to start a passion off for sure.
That's for sure.
So not only does Debbie love collecting lures and all there is to know about fishing gear, she has one of the most informative, I guess might be the right word, filing cabinets in this country. Debbie, tell us a little bit about your important filing cabinet.
I collect magazines, and I find a new lure maker, and I can go to Facebook and find 5 new lure makers every day. There's so many out there, and I write them up. I do a little search on them and print out a photo of their lures, put them in a file.
Brian's got a nice
obviously,
it's just A.
Some people have bigger files than others. You know, as our well-known lure makers, ones that have been making them for years.
Brian's just kindly gone up to that magical filing cabinet and just pulled two filing cabinets and just pulled out, and we've just grabbed one out here. And this is just going to be an example of the sort of things that Debbie has on file. This one is A and B Lures, Alan Sloman. And there's a lovely photo of Alan with some of his lures on the front there. We'll hold that one up.
Taken by me. Taken
by Debbie, there you go, very personal. And there's some lure lovers, I'll put in some cutaways here, guys, of this. Everything there is to know about it.
His backing cards.
Original backing cards. It's really history, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I did do a history with him. He came to my camp and a few years ago, and we did a history, and it was interesting how his lures transitioned over the years, because he did sell off to a couple of the brands and even the brand name.
Yep.
Because then he come back as A and J.
Yep.
Alan and Julie.
Yep.
And yes, and he operated timber lures for a couple of years with that as well.
Yeah, wow.
So,
and it's amazing, like just looking at this here, I won't go into exactly what some of this says, but it's like some of the big names we were talking about before, they always appear, and it's really cool to see back then that these guys were all mates, essentially. Like they all helped each other out, and like what we talked about, Peter, he was there happy to help everyone. Like you said, he was literally drawing templates, giving to people to go and make the lures, and some of those names are appearing through here. Something that's reoccurring, Debbie, I don't know if you can fill me in this one. This is a bit of a personal one. Why did a lot of lure makers start in 1992, my year of birth?
Well, that's what I said. This is... it swings.
Yep.
You know, you get 10 years of a lot of lure makers, then it falls away a bit, and then it starts again. It may be plastic takes over for a time, and then it comes back again. But and I think that's what happened in that time, is the plastic took over, the cheaper plastic.
Yep. Yeah, right.
So through the tackle shops, they weren't actually putting in timber lures in the tackle shops.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And that's just that swing you spoke about?
Yeah, and that would have had to do with the meatworks and that as well.
Yep.
Gilgai, that's Inverell, where he's from.
Yep.
So, and he would have had a good following down there, but he was actually, he was a very good carver as well, and paint job was exceptional.
And just off the top of my head, I know Nella and Lawson were very similar era to that. And it's like, these are big name guys that throughout. They're all sort of started in that same sort of time.
Yeah.
No, it is, as I say, guys, I'll drop some in here. There's some original drawings.
Well, he bought a couple of Brett Campbell's designs.
Yep.
He bought 303 and Baduri.
See, Debbie's not reading that either, guys. That's just straight off the top of her head.
Sorry.
And that just goes to show, like, how knowledgeable Debbie is. And this information, the more we can get this stuff out there, you don't find this on the internet. This stuff, you just don't type this into Google and this sort of stuff comes up.
Yeah, and obviously the pattern is there as well.
There you go.
In 2012, he would purchase that. But he had already sold the moulded, like your Barra Blaster. He'd already sold that to his auntie, I think it was. Jar Lures.
And you name it, guys, it's in here. Like, everything about it's in here. And just keep in mind, this is one. Debbie, how many files do you have?
Well, I've got 4 file cabinets, and yes, they're pretty much packed.
And that's just a part of A sitting there. It's phenomenal.
And I've got a box in there I've got to file yet. I would just love the time to do it. But, you match a photo to it, then you put it away in the file. So, yeah, just finding that time. I need a week or 2 off.
Hear that, Brian?
Yes. Park's pretty busy at the moment.
And I think that's a good time to bring up, if anyone needs to know anything, or they've got a lure that maybe their great-granddad passed down to them and they're not sure, stick it up on one of the pages. People like Debbie can come and answer your questions, instead of just old mate down at the pub going, oh, Billy made that and it's worth $1,000. Let the people that know tell you exactly what you've got, because there's a fair chance if it's been made, it's going to be in that secret little filing cabinet somewhere, isn't there? Mm-hmm. Pretty good chance.
I keep a record of collectors' boxes and how much they went for at the time, and when they're resold, how much they go for.
Wow.
Yeah.
But is it like an obsession? Is it
definitely an obsession.
Is it just like, I guess it is a drug essentially? You just got to get more, isn't it? You've just got to, like, is it for you? Is it finding that new person that maybe someone hasn't found before?
Well, I like the mystery with the IDs.
Yep.
Like sometimes if something stumps me, I've got to keep on going until I find the answer. And it might take me a couple of days before I can work out where it is in that file cabinet.
Yep.
Especially if it's not a well-known person.
Yep.
And I've got to remember the name first to get the ID.
Yep.
And I might have to go through it a couple of times to find that, because there's a lot of files in there.
Yeah.
But no, it's fun, and I enjoy it. Actually, I think what started it was Lure Lovers and Lure and More, Brad Holman.
Yep.
Fisherholic. He used to keep record on, where they lived and try and do a, change of name, like change of person. Say, for example, Sea Lures, when they changed ownership several times.
Yep.
And keep some sort of record, and I just followed on with that. And I do help Roger Dale with Lure Hub Oz.
Yep.
I think that's a terrific site. And, it's information that's been given to him by the lure makers, and I help him, my files are open to him if ever he needs it. So.
And like you mentioned before, unfortunately, there's so many lure makers that are getting on in age a little bit, and once we don't have those lure makers there, we lose a lot of that information. So if someone can gather that information and keep it for, say, my kids and their kids, like, that's unreal. That's priceless. That's what we need there for those guys to see. When
COVID was on, I was bored, for starters, because we were shut for 2 months, like all Queenslanders were locked in, and no one could travel.
Keeping us dirty New South Wales people out.
So I just took down a couple of boxes each day of lures and had the cameras and everything down there, and I would be on the phone ringing up the lure maker and finding out a different version of what was going on, how he started, if he had photos that he could let me use. And I travelled by virtual travel. I sort of went to Queensland one time, and then I go down to Victoria, and so it's not all cod lures. It was, you know, I touched on all different types of lures, and I did 52 lure histories, and that kept me going through COVID and kept it interesting, and people got to put their input. Say, for example, Coolabung was a really good one, where so many people gave their opinions on them and their photos, and you know, everyone had something to say, and they waited every day for my things to come up.
And I remember reading them myself and looking in the comments, and then old Billy Bob had put up a photo with like exactly what you said, a big cod he'd caught, and it was really cool to see like people so passionate about it and jumping on the back of what you were doing. Yeah, no, it was very negative in the COVID time. It was very negative on Facebook, and I sort of wanted to put some positive vibes out there, and it got everyone involved.
And you got an opportunity to do something where if the park had been open busy time, you probably wouldn't have had time to do it.
Definitely wouldn't have had time to do it. But
so if there's some good out of COVID, we learned a lot about Australian history of lures.
That's it, yes. And I'd love to continue that, but I just haven't had time at the moment, but I'm going to.
Brian's going to give you a month off.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
There's lots of frowns coming from the kitchen. Let's just dive into, I know this is going to be really hard to answer. We spoke about it a little bit. Guys out there that are maybe sort of my length of time making lures, sort of that 7 to maybe 8 years, which really isn't a long time as far as a lure maker's concerned. How do you aim at the collector market? How do you go, hey, I'm going to punch out some collectible lures? Like at what point does something come collectible essentially?
Everything's collectible. Everything's collectible. I think that you just got to find something that's unique for starters, but also how it's presented. It makes a big difference. And I'm talking about I have your first
you do.
collector's box from what I think, which was 2015.
2014, I think it might have been Ipswich.
Yeah, and a one-off was a Perspex box with a range of your lures in it, and it just is an engraved top on it, and it was beautiful. And it was only one made. So
that's it. Yeah. I think it might have been one of each of my models or something from my first Expo. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was 15. Yeah.
And it is how it's presented. Definitely how it's presented.
Yeah.
But you can get your whole range and just put it in there, and as long as it's in a beautiful box, and that people will want that.
And guys, if you're not a woodworker out there and you just love to have a go at making lures, and you're like, man, I can't dovetail things or do that. There's so many cool dudes out there. For instance, the gentleman that built this behind us is an absolute craftsman.
And I've got many cabinets, but this is the one I've picked at the moment.
Yeah, there's so many guys out there. Essentially, like Bill's boxes. I know we're going to go off on not onto the lure front here, but for Bill's age, what Bill can produce, he's recently done some collector boxes for myself, because I am not a box maker. I am terrible at it. I make a nice lure, but I wasn't designed to make nice, pretty boxes. For instance, this cabinet behind here, it is a work of art. And what Bill can produce, and I've been in his workshop, and it's not a very big workshop, and what comes out of it is pretty special, isn't it?
I know. He's a good friend as well. Yep. So I get a lot of things, small boxes, trays. He does a lot of work for me. So.
And it's beautiful work, and and because he's passionate about it, he puts extra love in, and if you're really looking at something there, guys, definitely reach out and get some boxes made. Don't feel bad if you're not going to make your boxes. All right, before we get on to some of our guest questions to finish off, and a few little more things we'll talk about, I'm just going to give a shout out to Garmin. You guys are in real trouble with what's here in front. Humminbird, Lowrance, you should be all shaking in your boots. Debbie, tell us a little bit about what you've found here for us.
I collect fishing instruments, and we've got the Colour Catch Plus here, which you know, you put down and it's a colour selector. It came out in the early 90s.
Unreal.
That one. This one here was given to me, and it's got the carbon paper in it, the sounder with the carbon paper.
We'll drop a cutaway in here close up, guys, so you can see it. But I'm not sure how you would mount that on a dash of a bass boat now, but
a little bit.
It's really an amazing unit to think of the era. It's actually quite small. It's smaller now than a 16-inch screen. It's really amazing.
Yes, I like collecting these things. They're quite interesting, and then I find the paperwork out of the magazines that go with them.
Yeah, it's history. Like we said, it's no different to the lures, like what we spoke about before, the lures down here, how it's all been done before, like sounders were done before, like the HDS or the Helix 7, they weren't the first sounders. Like, guys still knew how deep the water was 40 and 50 years ago. Like, this is what they had. So it's all been done before. Really cool.
That's for sure. I don't think those companies need worry about it, though.
No, I don't think they should. I don't think they need to shake in their boots too much. So, no, that's really awesome. Thanks for digging those out and showing us. That's fantastic. Okay, one thing that I've been very passionate about since I started making lures was the Australian Timber and Fly Lure Expo. Debbie, you were there from the beginning. You've been there to the end. Tell us how it all was back then. 10 years doesn't seem like a long time ago, but how different were things back then? It was in a little shed at Fernvale, wasn't it?
I just think how much space we've got now. Thank you, Fitzy, for doing this over that 10-year period, because it needed it. It needed it for the timber industry, for the timber lure makers industry. I've been there with a collection every year. Brian and I put together this thing. It takes us about a month, and we take up all these lures on display, and we enjoy our weekend away. Talking lures, like don't do that every day. And meeting people, and it's fun. And Fitzy has done a good job, and his team, very well organised. But mind you, the first one was quite a squash in that Fernvale hall. There was a lot of people jammed into that hall, and it was like, you know, just no one had time to actually stop and buy anything because they're getting shoved along. But then they worked out that, you know, it just wasn't big enough, so...
And it's expanded into what it is today, where I think last Expo maybe might have been around that 80 stalls, I think, around that 60 lure makers, something like that, which is unbelievable. Like, and like you said, it's a great opportunity for some makers that maybe don't wholesale to stores to make some lures and come out and sell them, and it is really a really good event.
I agree. I've only missed the one, so and that was the little short one they had. So, but we enjoy going up there, and that's my one break for the year.
And I hope we see it for another 10 years to come.
I do too.
I really do.
I hope you're listening to this, Gary.
Yeah, if your Fitzy's listening, we really want you to pull your finger out and keep the expo going, mate. No, it is. Look, from having organised events, fishing tournaments in the past, there's a lot of work that people don't go see. Obviously, moving forward, insurance is a huge thing. It doesn't matter what you do. You'd know with yourself at the park, insurance is really making it hard.
And security is the other thing.
For sure, you've got so much stuff on display. I'd hate to think how many thousands of dollars worth of, probably not in the thousands, we might be a lot more than that would be at the expo on that night. So it is a lot of stress on his behalf, and I think everyone understands whatever happens moving forward, like, it is not an easy job for him. And he's really a one-man band now, organising a lot of that stuff. And he works a full-time job as well. So hats off to him, and he's done a fantastic job, and I really do hope to see it for many years to come.
Same here.
Another thing that I'm really excited about for the last couple of years is something that Brian and Debbie have put here at Glenline Dam, is the Lure Makers Invitational competition. Tell us a little bit about that and how it come about.
Well, I like lures.
If you haven't got that by the 30 minutes, Debbie really likes lures.
We get the lure makers to come out, and it's a weekend that... It's not so much about the fishing competition, it's the networking that they can do with each other. You know, they meet up here on a social level and have a few drinks and get to see each other's lures and talk about lures, and yeah, it's quite a friendly weekend. And last comp, I think we had 31 lure makers turn up and a couple of extras, so it ended up being 48, which was a good number. And that makes it more friendly than having 200 there.
Yeah.
But we send out invitations. This year it's the 8th to the 10th of March and 8th to the 10th of November. And anyone who is interested, a timber lure maker, just have to let me know.
And
we do send out.
And just tell us a little bit about the rules, Debbie, how it works for maybe some people that might be like, oh, I do make timber lures. What's a little bit of the requirements to come and fish?
Well, it started off just being one lure and you had to make 5 of them. And 2 were donated, but we found that because the hours were long, that was a long day to use the one lure, the one colour, are reliant on that. So now we've changed it so it's 6 lures. It can be surface lure, it can be, you can then put on a, shallow diver, a wake bait. You can do, you can change your lures through the day, but it's 6 lures. You pick your 6, they're photographed, and they're photographed, with your number as you register, and you can bring a friend or a partner or an extra person with you, and they use 6 of that lure maker's, they represent that lure maker.
And the whole photograph idea is if you get the biggest cod and you hold it up and there's a gantrel hanging out of its mouth, well, sorry, champ, that's not one of the lures we took a photo of, and it wasn't timber either. So, look, it is, I can back up, it's a fantastic weekend, and that Friday night, it's probably one of my favourite social events of the year. It's fantastic. We have probably a few too many beers sometimes and tell way too many stories, but it is a really good group of guys, hang out at the kiosk, and then you sort of just move off afterwards and carry on. It is a really good weekend. And
it's a big day Saturday, so 5:30 in the morning till 5:30 in the afternoon. You can go out all day if you want to, or just go out for a couple of hours. But you can change your lures over. You might start with purple, and at the end of the day you're running a deep diver, totally different colour. So you got that bit of variety, and there is a Sunday morning comp, but not everyone does that one. But it's only a 3-hour. And it's not all about the prizes, it's about the social side of it and getting together, like Joe just said. So.
And a little bit of bragging rights, to be honest.
Definitely.
When I beat Mark last year, I told him the whole 2.5-hour drive home, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And like you said, he probably won't want to come back this year because I will not even let him get off the boat for lunch. So we stay out for the full 12 hours. So it's just a great weekend, and it's a really good, it's good if you do make lures and you come and put them against the other guys' lures, and you, like you said, you get to see everyone's lures and you might pick up little things, and it is, it's up there on the calendar for me, one of my favourite weekends.
It's also a big fundraiser for our fish stocking here at Glenline, and our group's involved. There's, they come and help with the food and that as well. We do have some helpers, and we end up, I think, by the time we had the raffle last year from the lures on, people donated a lure each, and we raffled that day, and the entry fee, I think it was $4,000, went to fish stocking. So
and the Bill's cabinet?
Great. And the Bill's cabinet, yes.
Which
that raised $500. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, and it is. It's just you come and have a crack, guys. Send Debbie a message if you want to find out a little bit more about it, because you definitely won't be disappointed. And it's just, as we said, heaps of times, it's a really good social weekend.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think we've chatted for probably long enough, but there's a couple of little questions just to end up with guest questions. Like I said, Debbie has sort of answered most of them throughout. This one really has nothing to do with lure makers. I've actually pinched this off the Alpha Blokes podcast I listen to quite a lot when I'm making lures in the shed. I just love this question. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given? It can be in regards to absolutely everything, because I just think sometimes, you might get in the shed, and it does relate back to lure making. You might get stuck in a rut, or you might just hear that little bit of advice. It might just give you that kick in the backside to keep going along.
Yeah, you've got me stumped.
I got Matt stumped on that one too.
I was thinking you from a lure collector's point of view.
From a collector's point of view?
I was going to say that from a collector's point of view, research definitely is the best tip out there, is to get some research. Don't believe it. rare isn't as rare as it's.
Yeah.
It's it's overused, that word, especially on, on media.
Yeah.
On Facebook.
Definitely do your research, like Debbie said.
Yes.
Because, look, unfortunately, the world we live in, there's people out there that want your money and not necessarily going to give you what you'd ask for in return. So definitely do your research and make sure. And that's where Debbie comes in it. Put up a thing. Hey, if you're not sure, there's no harm in it. Ring Debbie at the Glenline Dam Tourist Park. Hey, I'm unsure about buying this, not sure on the buyer or the maker. Happy to answer any of those questions.
I don't know how many times I've seen rare lure, and I know it's not rare.
Yes, Debbie's probably got 10 of them in a little bag over there. Alrighty, guys. Well, I think we're going to wrap that up. Debbie, I really appreciate you inviting us into your home here. And guys, we're not like other podcasts. We don't make our guests drive to them. We come to them. We come into their home and have a look at their lures. So, no, we really do appreciate you chatting to us all today. And I'm sure the viewers have really learned something. Okay. Well, there you have it, guys. What an unbelievable chat with Debbie Dare. It was really just, as I said at the beginning, it was a fantastic chat. Had an absolute blast chatting to her. The things that she knows blew me away. I had the folders there in front of me, all the information. She wasn't reading it out of those folders. It was all up in her head. It was really, really cool. Definitely look at lures in a different way after chatting to Debbie. I absolutely love lures. I'm all about lures, everything lures, lure making. I love it. And to see the passion that she has, and she's not even a lure maker, it's unbelievable, it's amazing. So yeah, as I said at the beginning, really appreciate Debbie and Brian inviting me into their home to go through that awesome episode with me. There's definitely information in there that you guys are definitely going to appreciate. So guys, thanks again for tuning in, back to Talking with Jollip. This has been an absolutely cracking episode. We hope that you join us in the future. We definitely have some really amazing content on the brink just about to come out, so hang tight to that, guys. Some more visual stuff. You won't be hearing that over on our Spotify channels, but you're definitely going to be watching that on YouTube. And yes, for you guys, there's lure making videos coming. Everyone's pounding me, just do lure making videos, so I'm coming for you. I'm going to rip in, and we're going to have a cracking year this year, guys. So I'm going to enjoy the rest of my drink here. I'm going to get up there, make some lures. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. If you're over on Spotify, hit that download button. We'll catch us on the next one. Joey out.